I'm Molly, and I made this video to talk to you a little bit about a blended learning playlist. So I'm going to talk a little bit about what a playlist is, and then I'm also going to show you some examples of different formats of playlists that my PLC and I have used in our own classrooms, and little information about why I like each. So first of all, what is a playlist? And in order to have that conversation, we need to talk just very briefly about what blended learning is. Blended learning is kind of a combination of face-to-face, your traditional brick and mortar classroom situation versus an online class where students are completely online, self-paced, they have all their resources online, there's not a lot of interaction with others or with a teacher. Blended learning is kind of a combination of those two things. So we still have whole group discussions and we still have teacher directions and that kind of stuff, but we also are using computers as technology to enhance what we're already doing in class and maybe provide some extra opportunities that we couldn't without the online features. So in blended learning, we use a playlist to kind of organize or drive our blended learning experience. So very simply, a playlist is really just a list of tasks or things that we need students to do. It's usually an online digital document, and a lot of times because it's online, we can just insert resources, links to videos about a certain topic, link notes to screencasts like I'm doing now, if you want to give your notes this way, to a virtual lab maybe, or to listen to a song, something like that. So it's a one place for students to find information. A playlist also gives some control to the students over their pace and over their choice of learning activities. So some students really like to breeze through notes really fast. Some students go pretty slowly over notes or like to work through a certain activity slowly and really think about it, and other students want to quickly get through it and do something else. So using a playlist in blended learning kind of gives them a little bit of control over how fast or slow they move through a set of activities. And then also, we know that all of our students don't learn the same way. So we give them some choice in different types of learning activities that they can learn the same information, but they get to choose how they like to learn that, whether it's watching a video or doing something more hands-on. And lastly, again, it's just a tool that kind of helps guide that blended learning experience. Our first example that I'm going to show you is a team playlist. This is something that you could use if you like small groups in your classroom. This was something that my coworker Beverly came up with, and this was kind of before we kind of dove into this whole idea of blended learning. She was calling it a choice board at the time, but essentially it's really just a playlist. So something that all playlists kind of have in common, at least for us, is that there is some sort of mandatory activity to learn certain material, notes, and then there is different types of activities to learn that information or helps that information sink in, and we kind of let students choose what they like to do to learn that material. So the way that Beverly's got this set up is in these different tiers. And the cool part about that is that if you have small groups working on this together, you can start one group on the listening section and start a different group on Explore It section and start a different group on the review section, and then you don't have all 30 students doing the same thing at once. One reason that's a benefit is, for example, the Explore It section. These are all little mini labs. And so if you don't have enough materials for 30 students to all do the same lab at the same time, you can set up one or two examples of that lab and let just one or two groups work on it at a time, and then when they're done with it, they put things back, hopefully, move on to something else, and then another group can come in and do the lab. So that's kind of a benefit of this type of tiering playlist. So, and some examples of things that we've got on here is listening to songs that are related to the screencast of notes that we had up here, these little hands-on labs, a review section where we put things like Quizlet or hands-on vocab matching games, and then a spiral review so we don't forget the stuff we learned earlier this year. Again, we've got some hands-on Tarsha puzzles, we've got some online games like quizzes, and then another hands-on top-down chart type activity. Cool thing about this, again, is that you can start teams on different tiers. When kids are in groups, and they are told that once you complete this one activity, you can move on and do something fun like a lab, they kind of encourage their other group members to do the same and make sure that they get their work done so that they can move on to something else. And encourage collaboration, all of those 21st century skills, communication, solving problems, and engagement. I mean, kids are not bored. When they are ready to move on and they want to move on to a new activity, they can do so. They have the freedom to do that, so nobody's sitting around waiting for everybody else to finish. So that's our team playlist example. Here's another very easy, simple Google Doc playlist, just made with like a chart on a Google Doc. This was my first playlist. It's not the most beautiful thing in the world, but it is where I started. And the reason that I made this specifically the way I did was because I was a little behind in the curriculum. I had a lot of information to cover, and this was one of my shorter units, and I wanted to really streamline the process of the students learning, based on the standards, exactly what they needed to know and get it done so I can move on to some bigger units that I really needed to cover. So what I did was I put up here your mandatory Learn It activities, and I separated this by day because I was trying to finish this unit in like 4 days. So it's like Wednesday's list of things to do, Thursday, Friday, and then this is what we're going to do to review. So on Wednesday, I set it up that these are your mandatory activities. I've got notes, I've got a couple other things for you to do. Beyond that, once you finish those things, you can kind of choose your learning path and decide what types of activities help you to learn the best. So I've got different sections. I've got a review section that has like Quizlets in it, a Watch It with different videos, songs, the Explore It section were some just virtual labs. Assessment section was kind of your self-check to make sure you understood the information for today. So by the end of Wednesday, I should be able to answer these questions with 85% accuracy and check in to make sure that I know it and that my teacher knows that I know it. For the assessments in this, before we got the genius idea of creating quizzes games to check for understanding, we kind of grabbed some pro-profs quizzes off the internet, and some textbook companies kind of have self-check quizzes that you can insert here. And then I had an early finisher section because you always have kids that are done and they get it and they're ready to move on and you've got 20 minutes left of class. So they have kind of an enrichment opportunity here. So again, this was a Wednesday, do these things. Then I didn't give them a lot of options. They had choices, and there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 options of things they can do, and I think I said pick 3. If you want to do Quizlet, watch one video, and then do a virtual lab, you're good. And then you check in with your assessment to make sure you've got it. If you don't understand, then you can go back and watch another video or review the notes or whatever. And just so you know, the next day, these are the things we're doing. And the next day, these are the things that we're doing. So it was kind of good to give students kind of a check-in of what they would be doing each day, and kind of helps them self-pace a little bit so that they know that by the end of Wednesday, I have to understand this information. Here's another Google example. This is a Google Slide individual playlist. So this is something that you would do. It's literally just one Google Slide. It's a list of things, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, that I need you to do so that you can learn this information. And this is a more individual based, what one student would do on their own versus like a team playlist where they would do something in groups. So step 1, I need you to watch this video and take these notes. Step 2, watch this video. Step 3, highlight some vocab in your notes, do this activity. And at the end, if you've done everything I've asked you to do, then you get a free choice, which is always great. And so by free choice, we have some of the same examples that we had before. You might be able to pick a mini lab to complete with just by yourself or maybe with a partner or small group. You could play Quizlet if you want to review some vocabulary. If you want to do some other hands-on review activity or play a quizzes game, you may do that. So it kind of entices students to get their work done, the things that I need them to do, so that they can get to that free choice activity where they're really just learning the same thing anyways. Another great thing that I like about this is that this is easy sub-plans. If you are unexpectedly going to be out, or even if you expect to be out, you can post something like this to whatever outlet you use to get information to students, whether it's your web page, whether it's Canvas, Google Classroom. You could just set this playlist on there and say, you know what, this is for Monday, March 5th when I'm out. These are exactly the things that you need to do in order to make me happy and to learn what you need to learn. So that's another good example. Here's another example of a quick Google slide, and this one is more basic, and here's why. This is literally just 3 steps. There is no free option. You need to take these notes, you need to watch this video, and then I want you to study for an upcoming vocab quiz on Quizlet. And the reason it's so brief is because, again, this is blended learning. This is not online. So at the beginning of my class, we probably did bell work and a warm-up and had some kind of discussion, maybe reviewed some things from yesterday, made any announcements as you normally do in your class. Then just for the middle chunk of my class, I wanted them to do this. So after all of that, I said, all right, go ahead, and I've set up a playlist on Canvas. You've got notes to take, a video, and study for some Quizlet. And then, you know, that's the middle maybe 20 minutes of my class. They get done with that, and we come together as a whole group again to do some review or to talk about what we should have learned or what we're going to do tomorrow or play a game or whatever. So this is an example of how a playlist is not something that has to take up your entire class period. You can do the things you normally do, plug this into the middle instead of standing up front and doing a PowerPoint, and then at the end, again, do some kind of closure activity as you normally would. This is the one I really want to talk about. This is a flex playlist, we call it. It's a spreadsheet that we made, and my whole PLC, Kate and Beverly, helped me, and we all made this together. But this is what we really like to use for a whole unit playlist. And sometimes we use this kind of together with a simple Google Slides playlist for a day, because this is a lot of information, and it's a lot of resources. And there's a lot of variety in the learning activities that you have. But it also allows students that if they're ready to move on, they can move on, or if they want to do extra activities, they can do extra activities. If they need to review something later that they learned at the beginning of the unit, they can go back and watch the notes or do some of those activities to review. So let me show you really briefly how this works. So across the top here, we have these different topics in chemistry. This is our chemistry. So describing matter, states of matter, they have the standard that specifically aligns to that topic that we want them to learn. Then we have our mandatory learning activities here at the top. A lot of times we put a link to a screencast of the video notes that we want them to do. We may or may not always use the screencast video notes as the actual instruction in class, but it's always good to have that there for kids that are absent or kids that got sent to ISS and missed the direct instruction for the day. So we have notes here, and then maybe a couple of activities that go along with the notes that you have to do. That's non-negotiable. And then below that, I have the self-assessment. Now, typically the self-assessment would be something that happens at the end of class, but we put it up here next to the mandatory learning activities, actually because of a suggestion of students. They said, can you put all the stuff I have to do at the top for me so I don't forget about it? So we went ahead and moved that up. And for the self-assessment or checkpoint to make sure you learned what you were supposed to learn today, we use quizzes because every kid loves the quizzes. And these are very short, simple, 10 questions, yes or no kind of things. We have a vocab section where we put Quizlets. We have Watch, where you can insert links to YouTube videos about that specific topic. So all of this stuff in this vertical column is aligned to this topic and this standard. So this is what you're doing today. We have a reading article. Sometimes we put links to a reading article online about that topic, or sometimes we just put, you can read about this on textbook page 349, because the textbook is a great resource. We've got Listen, where we've got songs, Explore, where we have hands-on learning opportunities like labs, virtual labs in the tech section, and then some enrichment opportunities for early finishers and kids that just need some extra there. Excuse me. So I really like this. A lot of times we use this. I post this on Canvas so kids can access it anytime. But we don't necessarily work from this playlist every single day, but they can access it anytime that they like. And then lastly, the last example I'm going to give you really quick is BlendSpace. If you haven't heard of BlendSpace, Google it. It's easy to use. It's free. It's essentially just another way to put a playlist. You can type on the side here, search for resources on, states of matter, solids, liquids, gases, and then just kind of drag and drop them into this ordered 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 list of things that you need students to do. I guess that's it. I like this. This is just another example of something that you can try to do. I hope I've kind of sparked some curiosity and some creativity in you to make your own playlist and given you some examples to kind of work from, because it's always good to have a good example. Thanks. I hope you enjoyed.